emailed me again recently. Well, actually, let me do a formal YouTube intro here because I don't just want to get into it because I want to get this up on YouTube as well. Hi, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. No giggling allowed in the intro. Today we're having a conversation, I think a quick and interesting conversation with Brandon MacDonald of the band Home Is Where. Brandon actually approached me in email, not to pitch an album or a piece of music or anything like that, though you have shared your music with me before. But no, you sort of suggested that we jump into a convo about like the current state of the emo scene, interestingly enough. And I mean, you being in one of the more, appreciated underground bands as of right now, because your last record was pretty, warmly received by a lot of different, sites and writers. I thought that could potentially be a great conversation. Let's hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were. One of the more respected artists in the scene currently, and where you feel like the band's music is going, and where emo music in general is going at the moment. And I appreciated you reaching out and making that suggestion, and just wanted to have you on here and I guess hear you out, in terms of like, what you feel like is so exciting, what you need to get off your chest in terms of like, what are these developments that I need to know, that we need to know about in emo music broadly?
Well, first off, let me being here just solidify the fact that if you email Anthony Fantano, he will have you on the stream. And
I will, if you email me and you have like a great idea or, just like a cool conversation topic, I'm into it.
Yeah, that's so cool to have me on to talk about this. But so what's been going on is I feel like, and a lot of people feel like, since like around maybe like 2017, 2018, like emo and like the DIY, like emo scene specifically has gone into like a fairly different direction than what was happening years prior with like the emo revival with bands like Empire or Algernon Cadwallader or stuff like that. And there's a pretty noticeable shift in who like the audience was as well, and not just like the sound, like and aesthetics had changed quite a bit too, like especially now. I think within like the last 2 or 3 years, we've definitely seen within the scene like a huge shift in aesthetics, like production choices, arrangement styles, like composition. Like some stuff you can argue like, how is this even emo, like to a certain extent, with bands like Stomach Book or even like Glass Beach. And yeah, I just feel even in like adjacent scenes as well, like even the screamo scene, which is just an offshoot of emo, and it's when it happened is even going through like a pretty sharp change in what we had been used to for the last couple of years as well. And like there's still like those bands that are keeping around like the older style and keep that alive and well. Like some people even argue there's like an emo revival like happening, which that's cool. I just wanted to I didn't like come up with the concept for Fifth Wave or anything, but I latched onto it because when we first started Home Is Where, there weren't like a lot of band, and this was like late 2016, early 2017. There weren't like a lot of bands happening at the time that we were really interested in the scene, and the bands that we were had either like broken up or like went on like an indefinite hiatus or like completely changed like their style, like outside of emo, like just did something totally different. And then the artists that were happening, my friend group like couldn't relate to, and it seemed like online too that there were like a lot of people who had a hard time, like, yeah, this is good, but man, wasn't it great when so-and-so dropped, like in 2009, 2010 or something like that. So there's like a lot of romanticism happening for bands that were gone, and I found that like to be a little frustrating because even though it wasn't like my cup of tea that was happening at the time, like I still thought like these artists like deserved that kind of attention, and with that, I think it was like an unconscious thing where like artists were taking like these similar influences, like around 2018, 2019, we started seeing like a lot of influence from the Brave Little Abacus and artists like Hekra, really like just affecting the way like people compose their music. I was certainly thinking about that when we were writing our records. And when I talked to like other people like in the scene, they, you know, they're in the exact same boat where they were really inspired by the Brave Little Abacus in one way or another.
Frankly, I'm happy to kind of see that coming around, because instrumentally, like, they were easily one of the most out there, you know, bands of, you know, kind of those earlier band campish years.
For sure.
And, you know, and,
I feel like,
and as far as like a lot of the revivalist bands that kind of erupted around them, I felt like they were almost kind of lacking a similar kind of adventure. Not to say that they all needed to sound like Abacus, obviously, but you know, there was kind of a sense of adventure in their music that I thought was like, you know, lacking in some of the revivalist stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that was like part of the reason like I felt like I lost interest after like after like the Hotelier broke up. I was like, okay, well that's I don't know where we're going from here. Like that was it, you know? And like yeah, and then I just had a hard time relating to this stuff, and a lot of people did too. Like they did, like I didn't understand where it was coming from. Like there was like a really popular thing to like sing about like getting really like high and then being upset about a breakup, and I was like, what is this? Like, what am I doing? Like, why am I listening to this? I'm an adult. It's like, but I was like, I've listened to, you know, X 90s band like a million times. Like I want to see where this goes. Like this genre, it's like, you know, it's my favorite genre, you know, I like emo, but I don't know. I just was really kind of just perplexed. And when we made our first EP, I wanted our mindset that we had like no following. We had like nothing. Our mindset is we wanted to make like the end all be all emo record and then have this like EP be discovered like 20 years down the line and people like, who was this band? Blah, blah, blah. That was like the pipe dream back then was, yeah. And so we took all these tropes from like the emo revival and tried to like put them on their head a little bit. And then it came out. And then for our next record, we started writing it in about early 2019. And it came out last year. We wanted to write something totally different. Like we weren't really thinking of it in terms of like emo music. And when I talk to artists who are making the emo records that a lot of people are like hyping up and like getting behind, they're thinking kind of the same thing where they don't know how it ends up like sound like having that like direct correlation with like emo or something like that, but they end up there, but they always have like something else in mind, whether it's like you know, like bedroom pop or just like old like folk music or even like hardcore or something like that. Like they yeah, emo is not like the end all be all what's the word I'm looking for? It's not the goal, you know. It's not like let's make a record that sounds like Algernon Cadwallader. It's like let's just make a record, you know. And I'm sure people back then would say the same thing too. But it all sounds really similar. There's a hard like you put like emo revival playlist on Spotify and put it on shuffle. You know, you got to look at it a few times to see who this is. Oh, okay, yeah, I like them. You know, but I feel like now there's a lot of bands who really have their own style, really carve out these interesting sounds. There's a lot more use of like synthesizers is like the most popular thing I've noticed in like chiptune ideas, because these are, you know, people who like grew up like heavily on like Nintendo kind of stuff, like bands like Hey I Love You or like Lobster Fight. In there, you reviewed Lobster Fight, right? Yeah, right, that was. I thought that was sick when you. I was like, I love that record so much.
So you know, just to kind of like dig into something that you were talking about earlier. Sorry, so like I'm trying to like look at chat. Like people are dropping fucking paragraphs about My Chemical Romance and Sunny Day Real Estate that I cannot read right now. It looks like copy pasta.
Is it the copy pasta?
It's probably the copy pasta. Yeah. So anyway, Anyway, yeah, and people are now laughing at that. So, so just to, for anybody who's like uninitiated, to sort of like, make the fifth wave conversation sort of clear, because when we talk about the waves, we're talking about like the first wave being like, late 80s Rites of Spring type shit. Then the second being kind of like that still underground, but like more melodic and super influential and formative, portion of the genre, where you have, bands like Mineral and so on and so forth in the 90s. And then in the 2000s, you have that commercial peak with the most popular bands that everybody knows for good and for bad reasons, because obviously like some of the worst commercial acts in emo kind of came out of that. And then post that point, I mean, I'll say personally, like that was a time when I probably listened to the most of it, because I was in college during those years. So, a lot of bands who either played emo or played emo adjacent music, be it screamo or, styles of metalcore that like incorporated emo, aesthetics or themes or sounds. I was listening to a lot of bands in that vibe, and, a lot of groups and artists who didn't necessarily make it, but were considered it anyway, like Conor Oberst, for example. Yeah. Because during those years, anybody who made like, sort of like sad boy music was thrown into the emo bin. But, in a way, I was happy to see it continue thriving when the internet kind of democratized things and kind of created more of like a, just a more, I guess, digital DIY type of space. I kind of, went through the same experience that you did in a way. And it's validating to hear it, that you were at a certain point, like, I'm an adult now. I need something different, or I need something else, because, in one breath, I did feel bad because I'm seeing like a lot of young bands who are very passionate about what they do. But me as like a 30 something, I'm hearing some of it and I'm like, it's okay. It kind of reminds me of the stuff that I remember listening to, but, I feel like I need something new, or typically like whenever the younger generation is doing something, it's not just to kind of like wallow in maybe what happened 20 or 30 years ago. It's usually to improve upon it. You know what I mean? And, I feel like that's been running for a while, but what you're kind of getting to here is in this sort of fifth wave, things are kind of heading in a different direction aesthetically and musically.
For sure. I feel like there's a lot more of an embrace aesthetically with like cartoons, oddly enough. Like if you look at like a lot of the album covers or like logos, like people even like we have like a cartoon like logo, like Weather Day or Your Arms Are My Cocoon. Right. And I feel like back in the day it was more like desaturated shots of like of like telephone wire, like in like
suburban
nostalgia,
nostalgia, or suburban sprawl and decay. I want to ask you something I'm kind of noticing differently about the makeup and the DNA. A lot of the artists of a lot of the artists and bands that are kind of getting popular right now is like there has just been over the past, maybe 4 years or so. As more new artists are kind of breaking and getting popular in the scene, there's been almost like a night and day difference in terms of like, I guess like, LGBTQ representation in the genre, even people of color. And in my experience, historically, like, I've listened to underground music all my life, from punk music to, metalcore and every other fucking thing. But like, in my years of kind of coming of age as an underground music fan, I can't think of a genre that has consistently been straighter and whiter than emo. So,
we have gore grind.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, there's a point there. That is a point. I'll give you that. But like, with that being the case, what do you think has led us to this point where there has been such a stark shift, where you are seeing so much more representation so suddenly, in the genre as a whole?
I feel like seeing more openly like queer people, specifically in like emo DIY. I don't know if that comes directly from like an emo band or anything like that. I think it comes from more so like other spaces, like being more open towards, those kinds of folks. Like yeah, like I'm a trans woman, so like
Sure.
there's a lot of like, and it's hard, like looking back, it's hard to, when you it's very few people, like I can relate to that experience, who made those made like the classics from, I don't know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, especially older. um and it's, yeah, and I feel like that perspective, that was something else I wanted to talk about, was like with more queer people and more just like people of color in general, like coming into this, well, being not even just coming in, they've always been there, but like being more upfront, I guess.
Right.
I don't even think that's like the right word, but um lyrically there comes more perspectives and more like ideas, and that was something that's really important to me. Like for Home is Where, I can't sing for shit, so my number one goal is to write like the best words I can possibly write, and that's up to you if you like them or not. I'm not even sure if I like them half the time, but I do put my best into them. And when I focus on other people's, like like I was saying earlier, there was a lot of songs about like smoking weed and like just getting fucked up in general that I don't relate to. And like a lot of this like very, very bare bones, heart on sleeve, like heartbreak kind of songs, where it's like you can't really read them any other way other than them being like, like a heartbreak song, like complaining essentially. And seeing more people sing about things that they experience, that's like, that's like real shit, that adds to like the weight of like the supposed depth your music is trying to convey. I don't know if that made any sense. I feel like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like, there's like this thing with emo that it's supposed to, that it seems like deeper than it is. It's like, there's a picture of a house. Oh, whose house is that? What happened in that house on the album? And then like, you get into these song titles, and the song titles are like these long inside jokes that you're never going to understand. Like, what happened at the Chuckle Hut on 4th Street? I'll never know, and then, the songs are delivered in like really urgent, really earnest. And then you look at the words and it's like, this bowl was lit, but my heart wasn't, or something like that, and it's like a gang vocal or something. And then now you have, I feel like, I don't know if it's like a real conscious decision or based on anything like that, but I do notice like with like bands like who get talked a lot about recently within the fifth wave, they put like a lot more effort into the lyrics, and there's just, and different stories being told, and like weird wording too. Like I've always been a fan of like surreal lyricism. Like I'm really into like Bob Dylan and like Tim Kinsella and like Jeff Mangum and those kinds of folks. And so to hear, and that really doesn't get transferred in emo like a lot. Like very few bands really messed around with that style of like where it feels like free form or like stream of consciousness, but it's not. And it's really cool to hear like those ideas being explored lyrically.
Yeah, for
and then
a
there are
long
other
time
bands
and on a lot of levels, it's almost like I'm not shitting on the genre. I mean, you obviously have your criticisms of it, but it's gotten to a point, or was at a point where it seemed almost maybe a little too self-referential. Where it's
For
like,
sure.
well, can we pull from the outside a little bit?
Yeah, and like, yeah, that was something else I wanted to mention too. Is like, it's not just emo influencing emo, like emo revival. Let's redo what they did, maybe add a little bit of spice to it, but ultimately, if same thing. Where I feel like this is we pay respect. They pay respect to the past, but also like have an interest in like what the future could be, and just pushing it to the point where it's like I feel like hyperpop has a lot to do with that. Like I feel like that there's an influence from there sprinkling into all forms of DIY, not even just music.
Yeah. No, I wanted to kind of bring that up as well because in the wake of this fifth wave and some of the artists that you mention, it's funny. I've reviewed some of them, and some of them I wouldn't necessarily like. Obviously, I hear a very clear emo influence in their music, but I wouldn't necessarily like label them directly as an emo act or anything. So I wanted to say like what are your thoughts and feelings about the ways in which emo's sound and style is like popping up so clearly, be it in various shades of hyperpop or bedroom pop and that sort of thing. It seems like creatively there's a lot of different parallels, happening right now. In terms of like, emo music manifesting in a lot of different kind of DIY styles, not just emo itself.
Yeah, and there's like even like with like the Y2K kind of return to those like aesthetics, like people are like starting to like praise, like I feel like MCR is more popular than they ever were, or
Right.
and everyone lost their mind for the Where We Were Young Fest kind of thing. So like
Yeah.
there are people still interested in that old style, and there are like newer bands like doing like that style too. Like Safe Face from New Jersey, I feel like they're like a really good MCR. I wouldn't say like MCR styled kind of band if you're not looking for the weirdo stuff like Lobster Fight or like Rookie Card or something like that. Like, but that's where I'm really interested in, and bands also like from across the world too, like Longinus recordings. They put out the Asian Glow and Paranol records. Am I saying that right? Paranol, the blue album with
I'm aware of the Paramount record, yeah. Which also has a lot of shoegaze influence on it too.
For sure.
It's like it's so many things other than just emo.
Yeah, and that's my favorite thing about like what's happening in this new wave, where there's other things like influencing it, and like it's not so self-referential. Like because towards the end of the revival, it felt like a snake eating itself. Like, and then like and to top it all off, like American Football, the band that everybody was really inspired by and more or less like copying, came back because that sound had gotten so popular. Was it like 20, almost like 30 something years or something like that? And then they came back with their second LP. So that's what I felt like really was like, okay, this is it. I don't know what's going to happen from here. And then emo rap was like was more popular than like actual like DIY emo at the time, like Lil Peep and Juice WRLD and stuff. So I thought, well, that's where this is going. I think maybe like guitar-based emo might just be like a really niche thing. And then like, I feel like the thing that restored like my interest in it was like that Pool Kids record that dropped in like 2018 or 2019. It was still, they're like a Florida band, and it's still very traditionally emo, but it was way more progressive than anything I had ever heard. Like, felt like really like jazzy and but also like super poppy and super catchy, and it was just a beautiful record. And I was like, okay, well, if more stuff like this can come out, then you'll keep coming back to it. And then weirder stuff started happening, and then that's when I was like, holy shit, there's something really special happening right now. And I just wanted to point it out so people can stop, celebrating a corpse and help them, support the people who are actually doing it now.
For like frame of reference in terms of like where kind of maybe the line is drawn stylistically for you, in reference to the prog thing that you were just talking about, like what about The World Is a Beautiful Place? Because on their new LP, like they incorporated quite a bit of, like almost like a prog rock kind of influence, if you've heard that record.
It's great.
And in that, do you feel like that's gone too far? Is it drifted too far away from like the blueprint, or do you still feel like it kind of sits pretty snugly into the, into the emo kind of tree?
I feel like emo is at its best when you can't tell if it is or isn't, especially in a modern sense.
When it's not living up to a cliche.
Yeah, exactly. Because like I feel like the really great like traditionally emo records are already made, and I feel like that for most rock music in general. Like if it's a traditionalist kind of style, I feel like the best of the best has been made. You can make like a great record, like you can make like an amazing record, but if it's like I don't know how it'll translate or how it'll age. Whereas the weirder or more abstract something is, the more, at least personally, the more I'm drawn to it, and the more time, because I have time to dissect it. Like it's not so dissected. It's not so transparent to where I don't see anything after a certain point. Like there's always something to investigate. And even with like the poppier stuff coming out now, like bands like Camp Trash or Origami Angel, like I feel like they approach like emo pop more different, like in just a different sense than people before.
One thing I'll say about kind of the very like meat and potatoes revivalist stuff that we were hearing throughout like the midst of the 2010s. While I didn't, review a ton of it, and when I did review it, sometimes it was kind of positive, sometimes a little on the fence, while it wasn't exactly like my wave personally. One thing that I can say about it, you talk about the self-referentialism, as do I, but like emo is one of the few genres that I feel like can thrive and get away with exactly that, because in its blueprint, as long as you're following the blueprint, it speaks to such a specifically youthful angst that if you just like continue to do it, obviously the audience that you started with is going to grow and move on elsewhere at some point. But like, there's always going to be an audience for that feeling, because there's always a group of people who are in the middle of that fucking feeling, and they're looking for some kind of validation or stimuli or something that's going to help them understand it, or I guess kind of just work through it.
And that feeling is like something that's like really special and like really nuanced and like really malleable. And that's why I feel like that when we get to the far off stuff, when we're at like the precipice, like it sounds so fucking dramatic, the precipice of what is and isn't.
This is an emo conversation, so it can be dramatic. I mean, sure. So far, I think this has been the most undramatic emo conversation ever. So a little drama is okay.
For sure. Sorry. I don't know. I just really like emo. What do you have a favorite emo record or emo band? Like do you have one that you're like, yeah, this is my shit?
No, I fuck with some Mineral stuff. In college, I loved Captain Jazz because it was just so
it's my favorite,
raw and noisy. And I was into the chaotic stuff, which also got me into a lot of screamo as well. And I was also into some of the steadier shit like Death Cab for Cutie type stuff. And back in the day, a lot of people considered like, early Modest Mouse to be a little emo adjacent as well. And I kind of messed with them too. And again, like I loved the shit out of Bright Eyes. I just loved like how tragic it was. And, but still around that time, it was kind of cool to like Bright Eyes. I'm talking about like, college vibes. It was cool to like Bright Eyes, but it wasn't cool to like MCR. But like when I was the music director at my college, that's when I first heard MCR like off Three Cheers and everything. And the songs were so fucking good. And that record was like refreshing for me because I, for the most part, felt like as a very devout punk at the time, like I felt like a lot of modern punk and especially pop punk just went to shit. And I mean, I'm probably like, I was kind of the odd man out on this, but I hated like American Idiot and everything, and like the phase that Green Day was going through at the time. But like when MCR came out, I was like, whoa, this is like some really good fucking pop punk. Like, and I grew up on that stuff, like, with The Offspring and Dookie and so on and so forth. And it was just so catchy to me. I didn't really think of it as being or not being emo. You know what I mean? The stuff that, really got like lobbed the label most often, it's like nobody back then would give you shit for listening to like, Sunny Day Real Estate. Of course, it's like that, they're an acceptable band. But like if you're listening to Taking Back Sunday, like you're getting fucking punished. You know what I mean? Like if you're listening to any of those bands that like, are sort of like more radio friendly and have the whiniest.
Yeah, the mall emo stuff.
Yeah. Like exactly. Just like mall emo shit. Like if you're into any of that shit, it's like, you're done. You're like instantly uncool. But to your point, like you said, like MCR is one of the few bands from that era and from that lineage that like actually in retrospect, like their music holds the fuck up, like really, really fucking hard.
And like we're seeing now, because we're like 10 years removed from like the peak of it, really, like what emo revival like albums and bands like are really standing like the test of time. And I think it's really cool to see like a lot more stuff that wasn't celebrated at the time. Like you mentioned earlier, like the Brave Little Abacus, like nobody really cared about it when it dropped, outside of their like regional scene. But over time, like that record is just like become like gotten its own life. And that's like my favorite thing about emo is like those records that get justice like down like somewhere down the line.
Sometimes it takes 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, you'll get there. It's an investment. Emo's an investment.
No, and it's always fun and interesting after the fact to see people kind of like reacting to something as if it's like brand new, but it happened so long ago. And, you know, I mean, I remember like having friends who were very much into emo music, you know, in college. And again, just like very vividly that whole point in time where culturally it was at its most like commercial. And you know, it's funny in retrospect with the popularity of like American football, you know, occurring in the way that it did. With a lot of younger listeners, there's this presumption that like, oh yeah, they must have been really popular in the 2000s too. And it's like, no, you guys did this on the internet. Like this is your little internet. It's like fucking Fishmans, you know what I mean? Like back in the day, nobody was talking about Fishmans, at least like, you know, in the hip music circles that I was in. You know, I'm sure like some underground heads in Japan like would swear by them from back in the day, but like no, like in the cool kids music club, we weren't talking about Fishmans or American football. You know, and it, you know, with the newer generation, it seems like there are more people who are passionate about American football than Cap'n Jazz, and they were, you know, more of a discussed band. At least I could say in terms of like the underground heads were like, oh, I'm not listening to that Taking Back Sunday shit. I'm listening to Cap'n Jazz. Okay.
I don't know. In Florida, it was everyone had the Taking Back Sunday hoodie.
Oh no, I'm saying in the pretentious people's club. In the pretentious people's club,
okay.
who would just like, you know, be snooty toward any kind of like mall emo. Yeah. And also it's like it's a Connecticut's an East Coast thing. I was also heavy, you know, into Against Me around that time as well. Like Against Me just like blew my mind. And you know, especially in like their early EP stuff, I saw a lot of kind of parallels with emo music in their stuff too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as a trans woman from Florida, Laura Jane Grace is she's the bee's knees.
I'm trying to remember the name of the track. It's on one of their early EPs, and it was on Axl Rose. Like, what is it? Like, like it has a girl's name in the title. Like,
hold on. Got my like, iTunes loaded up.
Doesn't it have an apology in the title?
I Still Love You, Julie?
Yes. Oh my God. That is the most emo fucking thing. That is the most emo, not emo song of all time. Like when I tell you, I would like just scream to that song in the car and just like, you know, be a sad boy to it. I mean, that was my vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah. No, most definitely.
I feel like my emo, not emo, and like this gets like discussed a lot on the internet. Like was, you know, like kind of like Pet Sounds. Like people like there's like a joke like Pet Sounds is the first emo record, which is like, you know, whatever. That's cute, but it's got there's some lines on that record that are devastating.
No, most definitely. You know, and the thing is like, it's kind of funny because like. What's interesting and what's kind of funny about the revival that we've been kind of going through, you know, over the past, like, you know, 10 years on the internet or so, or, you know, a little less than 10 years, is that like everybody was kind of working off of it with like a really clear idea of like what emo is as a form. And I'm going to borrow from that. Whereas like I could tell you, in the 2000s when like, you know, we were dealing with it from all sides, from like listening to the 90s stuff to, you know, being witness to all the commercial stuff that was so popular and on the radio and, you know, to the underground stuff that was really popular at that time and the weird genre fusions like, you know, metalcore and screamo and so on and so forth. Like at that time, we didn't know what the fuck any of it was. We were just like, it was all just random shots in the dark. Like nobody had a clear idea of what any of this was until after the dust was settled and most of these fucking bands were irrelevant, you know? And after it was done, we were like, okay, that was a thing. And like, oh, and as it turns out, like, because we want to maintain our cool kid cred, like half the bands that we used to call emo are no longer emo. We've categorized them accurately, and you know, there are some cool emo bands, but a lot of them were just like really bad commercial stuff that we don't talk about anymore. And you know, what you're talking about that I think is kind of exciting is that it's kind of putting it in a position again where it's like we don't know what it is, and it's just going to be whatever it's going to be. Some of it's going to sound old school. Some of it's going to sound like kind of a bedroom pop blend. Some of it's going to have, I just reviewed the new Foxtails record and loved the shit out of the, kind of chambery type strings on that. And that was great. Some of it's going to, have synths. Some of it's going to be more electronic driven. Some of it's going to be a totally different genre entirely, but it's going to borrow just ever so slightly from emo music. And it just seems a little more random now. And that's, exciting to me, even if I don't directly relate to the lyrics about being high in your bedroom and sad at age 16.
Yeah. And that's like something that I'm like really trying to, like the thing that you were talking about where we realized it after the dust is settled and like you see all these like articles that come out like what was the emo revival and stuff like that. Like I want to get like ahead of that, like I want these artists to get celebrated while they're doing it, because once they like, are 30 and have a job and, every band member moves wherever, that I want to see them live now. I don't want to see them, old.
Right. They should have the angst that they're pulling from artistically validated in the moment that they're writing off of it. Because I imagine that it's got to be pretty surreal to be like, yeah, here's a bunch of sad songs I wrote as a teenager. Now I'm in my 30s and a whole new generation of teenagers are relating to them now. That's got to be odd.
Yeah, and I also want like the second LP, like a lot of those like 90s band, like my favorite wave is the second wave. Like I love like the 90s stuff, but like that's what I really like came up on and like really like got me interested into the genre and stuff. And a lot of my favorite acts from that time, just didn't have enough money to do LP2 or didn't have enough of a following to warrant maybe, getting the money to make LP2 or anything like that. And where now, I mean, with home recording being as easy as it is now, like Your Arms Are My Cocoon made his record on his phone. And it's like, I feel like that is like an instant classic. Like, I feel like we're going to be pointing at that record and be like, that's where it all like really solidified. I don't know. I just really want to see artists like grow in, audience and platforms so they can like do the art that I really like. And I also want to see them like grow like artistically, like just, really, I don't want to say like self-indulge, but just like experiment and just do stuff that you think would be interesting and sometimes be even unsure if it works or not. Like I feel like some of the best stuff in music is the stuff where you're at the booth and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, what are we doing? And and even like with like the poppier stuff, like the stuff that is like really not too experimental at all. It's just pop music with an emo tinge. Like I feel like that's even more interesting from like a production angle, from how they like compose their songs, and what they're writing about is different as well. But also like really relatable. Like it's not so out there to where it's like unrelatable. But it's different, it's new. And I like, my favorite records are always records that like, maybe like the second listen is where I'm like, oh, I get this. It's not so immediate. It's not so, immediately satisfying. I don't know. It doesn't reveal everything in one go, and it keeps you coming back. At least for me and a lot of the people I know in the scene that like really, really like it.
To dig into this again really quickly, go a little deeper on it before I, send you on your way and thank you for coming through. The We Were Young Fest that's been announced recently, to kind of like, I guess be explicit about it, like a festival like this with as many huge bands on it as there are from like, different generations. What do you feel like the fervor around this festival and this festival being announced right now, like symbolizes for the genre? Like what do you think it means for emo broadly to have this festival happening at this moment?
I think it's cool that like people are going to be able to see artists that mean a lot to them, play maybe for the first time, whether you're like a young kid or like someone, just who was around at its peak, but just, couldn't make it for one reason or another. For me, I feel I'm a little, I don't know. I just feel like it's like, oh, a new market to sink our fangs into and exploit your nostalgia, you know? So there's part of that for me. And then, but it's cool to see like some newer bands, like, you know, get on there. Like it's cool to see like Knocked Loose also on that bill.
Right.
So, I mean, not emo like at all, but
right.
you know,
but they're in the mix.
They rip.
Well,
yeah, for sure. They're like adjacent.
There are a couple artists that aren't necessarily like 100% emo that are in the mix. I mean, I guess that's like,
well, I mean, real emo only consists of the DC emotional hardcore scene. So what we're talking about doesn't mean shit.
So I guess if I had one issue with the festival, aside from maybe it might just end up being a shit show, we don't know, that I've taken issue with is that, you know, outside of a couple bands being, you know, sort of only tangentially related to emo in the mix, it seems like a majority of the artists there are kind of, you know, it seems like the choices of the roster is based on not so much what you're talking about, like what the potential of emo is, and maybe the more exciting or cutting edge things going on in the scene. Not so much based around that as much as it's based around what is our nostalgic vision of what emo is, and what are the oldest artists that we can get a hold of, and the newest artists that we can get a hold of that represent that nostalgic vision, and just sort of just bury people in that.
I would love to see Jean Balridar interpret the When We Were Young festival as like simulacra. You know, like, I don't know. It's just like, I think it's really cool. Like, don't get me wrong. It's cool to see like your favorite band live. This is coming from somebody who has seen Bob Dylan 5 times in his 70s, you know, and it's not what it used to be, but it's cool to like be in the same room with, you know, some like a few people that mean a lot to you, that made art that you really like. But ultimately, the Where We Were Young Fest just is like, okay, the like the middle, like mid 30s, younger 30s, like millennials are now like just another like consumer demographic that we have X, Y, and Z to use like these points, whether it be like, you know, like the emo stuff or remakes of like movies or TV shows and stuff, like, and we'll use all this imagery to just siphon out their money. We'll ruin any sense, you know, they'll do to emo what they did to Star Wars or something like that, you know, like it'll just be like, I don't know, this is super bitter, but I just see a cash grab. Like I just see like a new market being exploited. You know, they're pulling on your nostalgia strings and you know,
no, I'm
more for
agree.
looking forward.
I fully agree. And I'm of that generation. I want to apologize to everybody listening who's younger than me. Get ready. You know, people who are my age and older are around the age now where, you know, they're like buying cars and buying houses. So that means like get ready in pretty much every major media format to watch my nostalgia regurgitated to you for the next 15 years. Like, you know, it sucks, but I had to grow up listening to, you know, boomers nostalgia all of my formative years. So, you know, get ready for mine.
You know, the cool thing about like being on the cusp of a millennial and a Gen Zer is that I won't be alive to be marketed towards the way the shit's going. So we won't even have to worry about it. We'll have to worry about water wars and all that fun stuff. So this took a hard turn. I'm sorry.
Drink it while you got it. All right.
Let's get a Bev check.
Brandon, thank you for coming on. And
thank you for having me.
I think a depressing ending is fitting for an emo conversation, frankly.
Oh yeah.
I think that tracks.
This is so cool. Yeah, no, this tracks. Thank you for having me. This was great. Yeah, this is cool. Talking to Anthony Fantano, best teeth in the game. I have the middest teeth in the game.
Your teeth are looking, no, that's, come on, clench them together. Like really good. There you go. Thank you again for reaching out and coming through and just having a great conversation suggestion.
Of course. Yeah.
And of course, you know, we'll link
I'm sorry. Can I plug real quick?
Well, I was going to say, we're going to link to Home Is Where stuff like in the D box, of course. Shout out who you want to shout out.
I want to shout out Your Arms Are My Cocoon. I want to shout out Short Fictions. I want to shout out Rookie Card, Glass Beach, Proper, For Your Health, Record Setter. I have a split coming out with Record Setter in April. That'll be out through Father Daughter Records and Top Shelf Records. Very excited about our split with Record Setter. Sorry, I have to make like a clip here, and yeah, things are cool. We have a record on vinyl. You can buy the vinyl. The album's called I Became Birds. It's cool. I think it's okay record.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for coming through, and it's been a great conversation. Appreciate you.
Of course.
All right. Bye.